The Bible talks a lot about it. Ecclesiastes 5, 1 Timothy chapter 6 warn us about it. They specifically warn us about loving it. Corinthians reminds us to give it away in love. And for a man who had very little of it, Jesus sure did talk about it a lot, didn't he? Last time I talked about money, I got to talk about Jesus talking about money, which was so interesting to me because if you look at all the passages, he never asks for any of it, but he is after it. And here's why, because it's attached to your heart. It actually is attached to what you value. And if you're not conscious of it, you'll value it and what you think it can provide. And what I challenged you with last time I talked about money was look at your bank account and check out the last 10 things you purchased. And what do you think it reveals about your heart? I say that not to condemn. I just say that to like open you up. And I hope that you have a greater awareness of your relationship to money. So my hope by the end of this message is not that you get to the end of it and you feel guilty. I hope, and I even prayed backstage, that you would get to the end of this message and be so grateful for further and deeper awareness of what God intends to do with it, because he has great purpose for it. So let's see what Proverbs uniquely has to say about the topic. It offers wisdom in life, but you'll notice that a majority of the times in the book of Proverbs, when it brings up money, it's just a whole lot of warnings. And remember, the perspective that I got to open this series with is of a father talking to a kid about every aspect of life and wanting them to have wisdom. And here's what he says, Proverbs chapter 11. He tells us that the Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him. Now, what he's specifically talking to is an agricultural society in which they would make income based on things that they would provide, like grain. And so they would put the grain on a weight, and a dishonest scale is them adding weights so that when they went to sell the grain, the people who were purchasing it would think that there was more grain, so they'd spend more money, and it was just dishonest. And he goes, the Lord detests that. And it's something really powerful about money where you could be a man of integrity, and then when money comes in, have you noticed it kind of like it's harder to be integrous? It's kind of like when you walk out of the store. Oh, this actually happened to me. I don't know why this is coming to mind. But one time I ordered a ping pong table. And when I went to go get the ping pong table, we had to decide, like, we're gonna get a nice ping pong table or like the cheapest one, or do we go on offer up and find the free one? We went to with like the medium of the line, and we ordered it, and we went online, ordered it, and we got to pick it up at the store. We drove up our car. They put the wrong ping pong table on our car. It was the fanciest one. And I consider myself pretty integrous. And then I get home and we unload it, and I'm like, and I went to work. And a different pastor walked up to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, you won't believe we got this like really nice ping pong table. We only ordered this one, but they made the mistake. And then my friend responded, what'd you do when you found out? Like, what'd they say when you told them? Verse 4. I did tell him. Don't worry, sinner. Okay, verse 4, wealth is worthless in the day. Sorry, both of us were the same. We need grace. Wealth is worthless in the day of wrath. So it talks about like, where does wealth have its value? It's only here on earth, but it's worthless on the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. What he's getting at is, what's the point of being wealthy in this life and being totally bankrupt in the next? Especially when how we invest it here actually builds for eternity. Verse 28, those who trust in their riches, yikes. And that's, by the way, really easy to do. Do any of you ever like look up your bank account and then feel a little bit better? Or some of you are like, no, worse. But some of you, I know, you feel a little bit more secure, don't you? I say this again in complete compassion. Those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive. Chapter 15, verse 27. I mean, Proverbs speaks a lot, so we're going to go all over the place. 15:27. The greedy bring ruin to their households. And I can get real practical on this one. The greedy bring ruin to their households. Anyone else played Monopoly and got in a fight during it? Let me ask you this. Does Monopoly bring out your best side? Some of you love it, that game. But the one who hates bribes will live. Chapter 28, verse 11 says this. The rich are wise in their own eyes. In other words, money can make you proud. The one who is poor and discerning sees how deluded they are. Chapter 28, verse 25. The greedy stir up conflict, but those who trust in the Lord will prosper. Chapter 30, verses 7-9. It says this, 2 things I ask of you, Lord, do not refuse me before I die. So this guy is basically at the end of his life going like, okay, I'm at the end and I'm like considering all of life. And you have a different perspective when you're faced with death. And he goes, okay, I've considered it all. Here's the only 2 things I ask. Number 1, keep falsehood and lies far from me. Which makes me wonder if this guy has been wildly affected by falsehood and lies, and I think he's not the only one. But listen to his second request. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. In other words, don't give me too little or give me too much. Here's why. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you or forget about you or forget to depend on you. And I might say, who's the Lord? Look at me. Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. There's these extremes. There's wealth, there's poverty that each provide a unique temptation to those who live in them. Thankfully, Proverbs doesn't just say things that are negative. Chapter 11, verse 24 gives us a positive perspective. One person gives freely. Oh, any of you live like that? If not, if you haven't tasted it, friends, I've tasted it. And it is so freeing. You become a little bit more detached when you're just generous with it. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. How do they gain more when they give more? Because you can't outgive God. And so another withholds unduly becomes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. But here's where I want to land. Chapter 3, verse 9. Honor the Lord with your wealth. And I want the Spirit to do what I believe only He can in this instance as I ask you this question in light of that verse. Honor the Lord with your wealth. Are you? Again, don't let the enemy sneak in and put shame in this conversation. Let the Spirit lead you to gratitude of awareness in this moment. Just honor Him with how you spend your money. If not, you can. And then look, he immediately gets, which part of the wealth? With the first fruits of all your crops. Don't get to the end and then give. At the very beginning, first fruits, the best. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing and your vats will brim over with new wine. I want to be so careful when I say this. It seems like there's so many scriptures all throughout Scripture that basically say this, give. You won't regret it. You truly cannot outgive God. You can't and you won't. Malachi says, test him on that one. Honor the Lord. So here's my 3 questions. The outline for this message is, number 1, why honor the Lord? Number 2, how do we honor the Lord? And then 3, where do we begin?